What's going on, everybody? This is Doomhammer with another update here. We are in the first video of the off-season, which is going to be the coaching changes. As you can see on the screen, coach firings in 2014, Johnny Holland from the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, he is actually the interim coach for the Bengals because it was John Harbaugh in the second season, was 0-7. And then Johnny Holland finished the season with a 4-6 record, and the Bengals decided that they were going to explore other coaching options. Now, Jim Tressel, on the other hand, he had been with the Cleveland Browns for a couple seasons. They were 6-11 his first year, 9-8, and that was the year they drafted Terrell Pryor, who became the Rookie of the Year. And then they were 11-6, made the playoffs, went 1-1. They won the wild card, lost the division. And then this year they went 6-11, and they were scarred with some injuries because Pryor was hurt for a bit. They were one game away from the playoffs, but they lost against the Patriots, which would have put them over Pittsburgh. And we know that the Pittsburgh Steelers made the AFC Championship game, falling to the Oakland Raiders. Now, I normally would have kept someone like Jim Tressel because that's what a normal team would likely do, just an off year, and they would have kept building. However, the Cleveland Browns are the Cleveland Browns. And Jimmy Haslam became the owner last season, and this was his first year, and they went 6-11, and Jimmy Haslam wanted to make his own head coaching choice. I'm saying as a storyline, Jim Haslam wants a head coach with true NFL experience and not play games with a college coach. So, despite the fact that he's had some decent success, he is out as the Cleveland Browns head coach. And then we got the Baltimore Ravens. Al Saunders was in his fourth season. He went 7-10, 14-3, making the playoffs. Then was 5-12, and then 4-13. So he could have been fired after 5-12. The Bengals gave Al Saunders another year, and this year was worse. So 4-13, second overall pick in the draft, not good enough. So Al Saunders is gone. He struggled. He even traded for Eli Manning because the AFC North was weak, and they thought that if they brought in Eli Manning, they could bounce back. But unfortunately, Eli Manning, Colin Kaepernick could not do it for the Ravens. Now, Bill Cowher is not technically fired. I'm listing this as mutually parting ways because he did make the AFC Championship last year before going 6-11 with kind of a QB controversy between Brady Quinn and the sophomore QB Kirk Cousins. He was, this was his fifth year. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, his fifth season. He was 10-7, 11-6, 12-5, 10-7, reaching the AFC Championship game, winning the AFC Championship game, losing the Super Bowl to the Eagles, and then fell 6-11. Bill Cowher, who's been in the league for quite a while, has decided to sort of move to broadcasting. Now, he was with Peyton Manning a couple seasons, and then even the year that they lost Peyton Manning due to the injury, that was 2011 to 2012, they went 12-5 with Brady Quinn filling in. And then Brady Quinn had the following year, which led him to the Super Bowl, almost won the Super Bowl, and then it just kind of went out of control near the end. So Cowher's out as the Indianapolis Colts head coach. And then we move to the NFC real quick. Only one NFC firing, and that is Mike Tomlin. And Tomlin has been there for 5 years, and they've had some of the great seasons and weak seasons. With Matthew Stafford at their quarterback, we'll see if he even returns this year because he may want out of Green Bay. But he went 9-8 his first year, missed the playoffs. Then went 3-14, had the number 1 overall pick. We stuck it out with Tomlin. Despite that, we drafted Von Miller, giving the Green Bay Packers one of the best pass rushers in the league. Over the years, they acquired DeMarcus Ware. They had Sean Merriman. They had a very tough defense. They went 10-7 after that 3-14 year, made the playoffs. Last year, they were 11-6. And then the 2013-2014 season went 6-11. And they had so much talent, and they still failed to do well in their division. Even the Lions were the ones that made the NFC Championship game. The Vikings and the Bears all made the postseason, while Green Bay was 6-11. So Tomlin finally gets fired from his post there as the Green Bay Packers head coach. And the last head coach to be fired is Tony Sparano. Only 2 seasons, but only 9 wins. So he was 4-13 his first year and 5-12 his second year. He kind of did what the Cleveland Browns did. Fun fact, their general manager was Matt Millen, and if you don't know who he is, look him up. Genius GM. But anyway, they went with Brandon Weeden at quarterback. Moved on from Eli Manning, which I guess technically Eli Manning didn't do very well in on the other teams he played on. But Weeden was not much better. They had Kevin O'Connell. They had Matt Castle. It was a QB catastrophe, along with Trent Richardson, who has been a decent running back, but let's just say the Chiefs were just a mess. So Sparano gone, along with these other 6 coaches. So in the Cleveland search, they're looking at Mike Nolan, defensive coordinator of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Their defense has been pretty strong for several seasons. Let's see, they were ranked, Tampa Bay. This past year, they were the number 9th ranked defense, 3rd with takeaways. Nolan and their offensive coordinator have been very active for many seasons. None of them, it's been Ron Rivera, along with, of course, Mike Nolan. And their offensive coordinator, who's also been with them, is Chan Gailey. They've been together for like 8-9 years, but he's being considered as a head coach. Then you've got Mike Pettin, which is an odd choice, but he was the real Cleveland Browns choice in real life. And he was the Baltimore Ravens defensive coordinator for multiple seasons. And this past year, despite the Ravens being 4-13, Mike Pettin led the number 4 ranked defense, number 1 pass defense in the entire league. So they're looking at Mike Pettin as a possible option. And then Mike Martz. He's the offensive coordinator for the Tennessee Titans, helped lead Tavares Jackson to almost an MVP season. They were the number 1 seed for a while, up until they became the 3rd seed, falling to Miami and the San Diego Chargers. So Mike Martz is an option. And then Maurice Carthon, who is the Chicago Bears OC. The Bears made the playoffs. They've been pretty solid. Although they were the 25th ranked offense, they were able to bring something out of Jason Campbell, who we didn't think would likely get there. But Maurice Carthon is an option for Cleveland. And then for the Bengals, they're looking at head coach Mike Tomlin as a potential head coach. So maybe he'll go from Green Bay, and instead of going to Pittsburgh, he might land with the Cincinnati Bengals, who were the worst team in the league. They were abysmal. They had the number 1 overall pick. They went 4-13, 31 ranked defense, 27 ranked offense. So Green Bay would be an addition. Tomlin did have a top 8 defense in the league in Green Bay, but he did have a lot of talent. We look at Mike Zimmer from Denver. So Denver overperformed. They were a potential Super Bowl favorite by a lot of people in the Discord. They were the 6th seed. And they won their first playoff game this year. They lost, I think it was to Pittsburgh. So Mike Zimmer is being considered he's also he was a defensive coordinator for the Cincinnati Bengals in real life, so he's an option. Scott Linehan, the offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions. Originally not someone I was considering, but he surprisingly had the number 1 ranked rush offense in the league, largely due to Reggie Bush running for 1,500 yards, 13 touchdowns, Ryan Tannehill, 459 yards, Jaquise Rogers, 152, Danny Woodhead, 150, and a lot of receiving options there because you have Reggie Bush, who had 384 receiving yards. You have Danny Woodhead that's also in the mix. So Linehan helped lead the Detroit Lions to the NFC Championship game, although they fell short of the Super Bowl. He is a top coaching candidate. And then Pepper Johnson. Pepper Johnson has been a defensive coordinator for quite some time in the Bay Area. And so with the San Francisco 49ers, he is someone that has been in the head coaching discussion for a while with other teams. He's been in San Francisco for 2 seasons, likely returning, no doubt, if he's not able to be brought in as a head coach. But there's your options for the Cincinnati Bengals. Moving on, we have the Baltimore Ravens have Dan Quinn as one of their top options. Dan Quinn is the defensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions. As you can see Linehan and Campbell, both options. The Lions were the 10th ranked defense in the league. They started off 1-5 and then turned their season around to an 11-6 season, winning the NFC North and being the 3rd seed. Ryan Tannehill was the quarterback, but they had some decent defensive studs. We see like Lawrence Timmons has been very solid for them. In the defensive backs, Casey Hayward, Brandon Carr. D-line has Deion Jordan and Daquan Bowers, only 74 apiece in their overall, but they play at a high level. Kyle Williams, you could argue that it was Dan Quinn's defense that helped them get as far as they did. Then with the offense for the Miami Dolphins, even though they were only ranked 14th, but they have the most explosive offense in the league. Cam Newton, Matt Forte, Calvin Johnson Jr., Tyler Eifert, Michael Jenkins, Jordy Nelson. And that's organized by Vinny Testaverde, who is a quarterback in the league for quite some time. I made him a quarterback's coach, and he's worked his way up to OC. He very well could land a head coaching job this year, if not in the future. Mike Martz, I've already mentioned his qualifications, as well as Pepper Johnson, all being considered for the Baltimore Ravens head coaching job. Then we've got Green Bay. They're looking at Mike Nolan like Cleveland, Dan Quinn, their potential division rival, to maybe poach him from the Detroit Lions and bring him to Green Bay. Jeep Christ, the offensive coordinator for the Oakland Raiders, who made the Super Bowl. They were the 3rd ranked offense, 2nd in passing, 21st in rushing. Matt Ryan with 4,495 yards, 41 passing touchdowns, 22 interceptions. A running game of Sean Green with 877 yards, Shane Vereen 311, and rookie Bernard Pierce with 133. Julio Jones getting over 2,000 receiving yards and 20 touchdowns. Craig Davis 775 yards, 6 TDs. Vernon Davis 713 and 10 touchdowns for the tight end. Jeep Christ is seen as a hot coaching candidate this season. And then Norv Turner, who was the offensive coordinator for the Super Bowl champion Arizona Cardinals. Only 1 season with the team as he was brought in to join John DeFilippo. And they were the 21st ranked offense. But when you look at who they had, they weren't really that great of a team. I said in the Super Bowl, I couldn't believe the Cardinals were number 1 in the league. They've got Andy Dalton, who is a decent quarterback, but he's only what's his overall? An 80 overall quarterback, which isn't bad. They've got Beanie Wells, Darren Sproles, LaMichael James at running back. No one that stands out, really. Sproles is good, but he's not Marshawn Lynch. He's not Adrian Peterson. But the surprise here was Mike Wallace. Mike Wallace had 1,957 yards and 20 touchdowns. Mike Wallace coming to Arizona was the greatest thing for him and his career and the Cardinals, because they won a Super Bowl because of it. Dallas Clark, 485 yards. Chris Givens, 443. So with the lack of talent, in my opinion, the Arizona Cardinals way exceeded expectations. They were the 5th ranked defense, 21 ranked offense, but when it came down to winning games and winning the most important game, that was largely due to the Cardinals, and so Norv Turner's being considered for Green Bay. And then we've got the Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs are considering Raheem Morris, the defensive coordinator for the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons were the number 1 ranked defense last year, and Morris has been several seasons with the Atlanta Falcons, where the Falcons became the Panthers, where the Panthers were the number 1 team in the league in defense for many years. For these past 2 seasons, Raheem Morris has been in charge of them, and they've been the number 1 defense in the league. They were the number 2 ranked offense, which helped. So Raheem Morris, also a good head coaching candidate. Mike Zimmer, we talked about him. Zimmer would fit the poaching a division rival from your division and making him your head coach. Mike Tomlin from Green Bay, someone with the only one here, well, not the only one, him and Norv Turner, the only ones with head coaching experience. And so he could go and try to rebuild the Chiefs. And then you've got Norv Turner, as I mentioned before, all of his long years in coaching. Now, in real life, he went to the Oakland Raiders as head coach, and then went to San Diego, and then has been an offensive coordinator for years. In my franchise, he never went to Oakland, and he never went to. Did he go to Oakland? Let me double check that, because he might have started out there. Did he? Let's go check my. Yeah, so in real life, he went to Oakland. He never did in this reality. But Norv Turner, in my reality, went to the Minnesota Vikings. And he was the Minnesota Vikings head coach for many years. And because of that, he he only had one team as opposed to two, and so if he gets a head coaching job with the Chiefs or with Green Bay, he is going to get his second head coaching. Well, it was third in his career, but second in my franchise, and he could go to the Chiefs. And then we've got the Indianapolis Colts. They're looking at Norv Turner. They're looking at Dan Quinn, Mike Martz, and Scott Linehan to succeed Bill Cowher. There's a lot of opportunity for the Colts. They are a pretty decent team. They look to be moving forward with Kirk Cousins, probably more than Brady Quinn, but they do have Chris Johnson. They've got Pierre Garçon, Reggie Wayne, unless he retires. So they've got some decent options there in Indianapolis, and someone like a Norv Turner, Dan Quinn, Mike Martz, Scott Linehan would be a decent option for them. And so let's go and see who they picked. So Bengals choose Mike Zimmer to be their head coach. So I thought that was a good choice for them because Zimmer was a coordinator for the Bengals, and that just made sense to me. So he's going to go, instead of being a coordinator, he's going to be the head coach. So instead of going to Minnesota, and Minnesota right now has Perry Fewell, Mike Zimmer is going to the Bengals. Cleveland is going to make their mistake and take Mike Pettin. I thought it was just a perfect reason to pick him. In real life, he was the defensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills. And I remember as a Browns fan wondering why we were even considering him because he wasn't a top coaching candidate. And so in this reality, he wasn't really a top coaching candidate either. But because he was with the division rival, the Ravens, the Browns fans or the Browns management thought, you know what? Let's take the defensive coordinator for Baltimore because he's a pretty good guy. He's probably tough. He's run a top 5 defense. Let's bring him to Cleveland to take on the Ravens. Then joining him is the other bald, goateed head coach candidate, Dan Quinn. So Dan Quinn, who originally went to the Atlanta Falcons, is now going to another bird team, and that's going to be the Baltimore Ravens. So they're going with as a Ravens. They had Al Saunders before, who was an offensive-minded head coach. I wanted to bring them back to that strong defensive approach. They used to have Brian Billick. They tested out Jim Schwartz for 3 years. Jim Schwartz failing to win more than 8 games in any of his 3 seasons. It was 7, 8, and 6 wins. They went with an offensive guy in Al Saunders. That failed. So now they're going to get back to smash mouth football, tough, hard defense with Dan Quinn. Now the Colts are going with Norv Turner. So they have one of the best offensive weapons in the league with Chris Johnson. They need to figure out their quarterback situation, but with the magic, Norv Turner worked with Andy Dalton and Mike Wallace and the Arizona Cardinals. The Colts decided that he would be the right person. The only one here with head coaching experience, getting a head coaching gig, it's going to be Norv Turner. The Packers pick a really weird option. Even I was questioning it when I was looking at all my options. But I'm saying with Green Bay, they just went from Mike Sherman, and then they had 5 years of Mike Tomlin. So now they're going to focus on who they believe is an offensive genius, an offensive strategist in Jeep Christ. He brought out the best in Matt Ryan over these years, and then they made the Super Bowl. So we see the offensive coordinator for the winning Super Bowl team, the Cardinals, gets the head coaching job. We see the offensive coordinator of the AFC champions getting a coaching job. Detroit Lions in the NFC Championship game. And then we see Raheem Morris with the Kansas City Chiefs. They are just a disaster. They're going to take their chances with Raheem Morris. Again, not too hot on his coaching history, but the Chiefs went with Dick Vermeil. That's who they started out with. Then they had almost 9 seasons with Dick LeBeau. They had Tony Sparano for 2 seasons. Now they're going back to a defensive-minded coach. So those are your head coach changes. I will kind of share with you some of the staffing changes that took place. With Tressel fired, Mike Pettin comes in. Greg Olson, the offensive coordinator for Cleveland. They then hire Brian Daboll. So Daboll was a real Browns offensive coordinator in the past, and so he now gets an offensive coaching job with the Cleveland Browns. Then we have Luke Fickell, who came with Jim Tressel. He is fired, and they bring in the Bengals defensive coordinator and interim head coach, Johnny Holland. And so they fire Holmgren, and they bring in Dennis Hickey. Any of you know Dennis Hickey? Probably not. But anyway, so that's a change for the Browns coaching and management staff. I have a hard time keeping track of managers, so I will give you that heads up. For the Bengals, they have fired Johnny Holland, hired Mike Zimmer. They have fired Jay Gruden, and they have decided to bring in Matt Cavanaugh. Cavanaugh used to be the offensive coordinator for the Ravens. He also was kind of out of the league for a while, and so now all of a sudden he's back. He's coming back as the offensive coordinator here for Cincy. And then Mike Trigovac, he filled in for Johnny Holland. He's been the Browns defensive coordinator, but he's out, and Wade Phillips is in. And so with Wade Phillips coming in, Wade has been with different teams. So he's been with the Denver Broncos. He was the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars for 4 years. And he's been with the St. Louis Rams. But he is getting a defensive coaching gig here in Cincinnati. Now for the Ravens, they bring in Dan Quinn, and he brings in Josh McDaniels. Josh McDaniels has been an assistant with the Patriots. He was the head coach of the New Orleans Saints during the Tim Tebow years. And then Mike Tomlin. Tomlin used to be a coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens. He had 2 seasons with them during the Jim Schwartz years, and he was promoted from there to head coach of Green Bay. Now he is coming back as a defensive coordinator with Dan Quinn, hoping to bring back that era of dominance from Baltimore Ravens defensive players. Moving on, we have Jeep Christ bringing Darrell Bevell. So we saw Bevell was fired from the Ravens, and he is now hired by Green Bay. Also, Mike Pettin, only a coordinator to be fired or to be let go and get a head coaching gig. And so you got Darrell Bevell, who is seen as like an offensive-minded young up-and-comer. Baltimore gets rid of him after 4 seasons with Al Saunders, but he gets a chance here at Jeep Christ in Green Bay. And then Dan Pease was fired by the New York Jets, and so he is hired after 1 season with Chip Kelly. And so the Green Bay Packers let go of Todd Bowles, and they hire Dan Pease. Then for the Chiefs, Raheem Morris brings in Greg Roman, and he was the offensive coordinator with the Indianapolis Colts for a while. So he comes in to fill in after Pep Hamilton ends up struggling as a offensive coordinator. Pep Hamilton was a very good head coach with the Tennessee Titans. He was the one that made the playoffs with Kevin O'Connell. Right, Kevin O'Connell. So he had several good seasons, but has struggled since then to really land a good OC job. Jim Schwartz, who was a former Ravens coach, head coach, I forgot to change that there. It's not actually Cleveland head coach. I think that's technically fired DC there, but forgive me for my graphics. You know, my channel's not paid yet, so it's all just for fun. And then they hire Anthony Weaver, who was the defensive line coach for the Buffalo Bills. He was a former NFL player. He gets the defensive coaching job there with Raheem Morris. Then we've got the Colts. They hire Tony Sparano to fill Greg Roman's fired position, and they hire Todd Bowles, who was fired from Green Bay, to fill in Lou Spanos. So the Cowher team's out. The Turner team is in. Sparano went from head coach to now offensive coordinator in Indianapolis. So if you want to see who the head coaches are in the AFC, we got Zimmer, Pettin, Dan Quinn, and then Lovie Smith, the 2-time Super Bowl champion. You got Rex Ryan in Buffalo, Jim Harbaugh, Chip Kelly, and Bill Belichick there in the East. Norv Turner, Ray Horton in Jacksonville. Jeff Fisher in Houston. Jeff Fisher was with the Titans, and he was with the Rams. I forgot if he was the Rams head coach. I think he was just the coordinator with the Rams. Let's see, was he a head coach? No, okay. He was never with the Rams. Why was I? Oh, because in real life he was with the Rams. Jeff Fisher, so he's with the Titans. He's bounced around a bit as a coordinator, but he now gets his head coaching job with the Texans. He's been there for, I think, is he heading into his 3rd season, I believe? Yeah, he's heading into his 4th season. So he went 6-11, 11-6, making the playoffs, 8-9, and will be trying to bring Texans back to their glory. Gus Bradley was in his 1st year last year, got the Titans to the 3rd seed, did great work with Travaris Jackson, that defense. Then you got Doug Marrone, who's done fairly well in Denver, surprisingly. He took them to the playoffs, I think, 2 years in a row, if I believe. Let me double check that. Okay, and if you want to know what I'm checking, this is what I use to keep track of things. I've got PowerPoints with all the different coaches each year and their coordinators. So that's what I'm looking at when I am referencing things. So yes, Marone has been there for 3 years. He's on his 4th. He went 6-11, 10-7, and then 11-6, 2 years back to back with getting playoff berths for the Denver Broncos. Sean Payton has been a playoff every year. He's been in the league, or he's been a head coach. He's been the head coach of the year once, but just can't get to the AFC Championship game and can't get to that Super Bowl. Then we know Raheem Morris and then Hugh Jackson, who made the Super Bowl. Wow, what a different world for Hugh Jackson. Actually, even making a Super Bowl is impressive. Then for the NFC, we got Bruce Arians in Chicago. He's been there for many years. Rob Ryan got the team to the NFC Championship game. Shocking there. Perry Fewell, and we know about Jeep Christ. Mike Shanahan went from Denver. Then he had some years off, and he went to Dallas next. Andy Reid, who won the Super Bowl 2 years ago. He would have been fired in real life, in the real life trajectory. But since he was able to hang in there and win a Super Bowl, he's sticking around. Jim Caldwell with the New York Giants did fairly well with them up until he didn't. Last season was pretty bad. We'll see if he has a similar season like last year, he'll probably be gone. And then Marty Morningway, he was the Lions head coach when they were really bad in real life. Was he the coach when they were? I think he was. Yep, he had 2 seasons, went 3-13, 4-12 with Detroit. Then has been the Eagles offensive coordinator, and he got a job with Washington a few years ago. Doing fairly well with them. They missed the playoffs last year. A lot of injuries with Michael Vick. But 3 seasons with them, he was 11-6, making the playoffs, 9-8, 8-9, kind of hovering around mediocrity. Then you got Ron Rivera, and he's had the same coaching staff since he started. That's Chan Gailey and Mike Nolan. And they've been at it for a while. He's made the playoffs. He's made the Super Bowl once, but trying to get back there. Brad Childress has been in Atlanta for a very long time. He got there in 2004-2005 season, and he's made the playoffs, 5 times since then. And then with the Peyton Manning acquisition, that he lucked out majorly because I was getting close to booting him. John Fox also there, a pretty solid coach. Pat Shurmur, less solid coach. He was in his first season this year, went 5-12. Not very impressive, but it's his first year, so we're not going to fire him yet. He took over after Josh McDaniels. Tom Coughlin, 2-time Super Bowl winning head coach for the San Francisco 49ers. He has actually had 3 Super Bowl appearances, but has won twice. He won in 2007, 2008. Then he lost the following Super Bowl, and then he won Super Bowl back in 2012. Fun fact, Tom Coughlin here he won the same Super Bowls in my reality as he did in real life with the Giants. So he was in the Super Bowl and won the same year as the New York Giants won. So that's pretty cool. And he did it with the 49ers in my franchise, and then he did it in real life with the Giants against the Patriots. Then we have another Super Bowl champion, John DeFilippo, Arizona Cardinals. This was his first year, and boy, that was an impressive year. Wins the Super Bowl. Then Mike McCarthy is in his third season with the Rams, went 8-9, then 6-11. So we'll see if he's able to stay around. And then a different Pete Carroll. He's in his 3rd year, went 6-11 his first year, 5-12 his second year. So they're going to be demanding that he turn this team around this year. Going deeper, for those of you who are major geeks, we have the head coach, followed by the OC, followed by the DC. So this is where I geek out a lot because I try to make it, how do I promote different people and what's the reason? So I try to see how well they ran their offense or defense, and then if they had real life coaching experience, that plays into it. But yeah, a lot of these changes for the head coaches. We see the teams that I haven't already addressed. Kubiak and Vitt stay the same in Pittsburgh. Then we have for the East, we'll go to the West next. I don't think there's any changes there. I think they stay the same. Yep, Jed Fish. Okay. Jed Fish stays as Denver. Where's Denver? Jed Fish. And then Dick LeBeau ends up. He's been like a positions coach since he was fired. He is now the defensive coordinator for Denver after Mike Zimmer becomes the head coach of the Bengals. Then for the Chargers, there's been no change. Jason Garrett, Bob Sutton stays the same. Then for Oakland, they lose Jeep Christ, so they promote Steve Sarkisian, who is their quarterbacks coach, to offensive coordinator. Romeo Crennel in his second season stays because they fired Dennis Allen a year ago. They bring in Romeo Crennel. Crennel starts his second season with Oakland. Then we see in the AFC South, Singletary and Philbin stay the same. In Houston, Greg Robinson and Mac Brown. So Mac Brown, the famous Texans head coach, is the offensive coordinator the past 3 years, entering his fourth year with Houston. And then the Titans are sticking with Mike Martz and Leslie Frazier. They had a great first year together. Mike Martz and Leslie Frazier could get a head coaching job if Gus Bradley keeps winning and having success in Tennessee. Then for the Buffalo Bills, Art Shell was fired. So Art Shell was the original OC, and he's replaced by Chad O'Shea. Chad O'Shea was someone that I saw as an up-and-comer in the league, so he's getting an OC job. And then Greg Schiano is returning as DC of the Buffalo Bills. Vinny Testaverde, Vic Fangio, they stay the same. They've been the same team with Jim Harbaugh for the past 3 years, entering their fourth year together. Jets, they've got Chip Kelly, and Chip Kelly fires Dean Pease. So Dean Pease has gone to... Where did Dean Pease go? Oh, to Green Bay. And so they hire Greg Minuski as their defensive coordinator. And then for the Patriots, they stay the same. Bill O'Brien and Matt Patricia. And then when we go geek out a little bit more with the NFC, Bruce Arians and his team stays the same. Maurice Carthon, Steve Zabo. Then in Detroit, Dan Quinn leaves for the head coaching job in Baltimore. So Greg Madison becomes the defensive coordinator for Detroit. We know Green Bay's head coach, or the coach changes, Darrell Bevell and Pease. And then Jack Del Rio and Terry Shea. Shea was like an offensive coordinator for the 49ers for a while. The year I might have fired Coughlin. Oh, let's see. Oh, whoops. Did I not have the full screen on for all of you? Oh, I guess not. Oh, maybe I'll move that up. So if you missed any of them. And so Shea is the coordinator here in Minnesota. They're all in their third season. The 49ers are all the same. Kirby Wilson, Pepper Johnson. As for the Cardinals, Norv Turner is out because he is hired as the Colts coach. And so Mike McCoy gets another shot at being a coordinator. Tim Walton is returning. Rams, they have Sean McVay after they fired Deuce Staley as offensive coordinator. Deuce Staley was a running back in the league for a while. I gave him the running back coach job for a while. He got promoted to offensive coordinator. And now Sean McVay is now the offensive coordinator for the Rams. And we might see him take on the head coaching job if Mike McCarthy sucks, which is a good chance. I mean, they got Andrew Luck, but they're in a very tough division. Chuck Pagano, he stays. And then Seattle, they fired Dirk Cutter, and they hire Anthony Lynn as their offensive coordinator, and then they keep Dick Duran as their defensive coordinator. But Tampa Bay, all coordinators stay. As for the Falcons, Ken Weisenhunt stays, and Raheem Morris gets promoted. So Greg Williams, who was a actually long-term coach in the league for the Rams, ends up. Was it the Rams? No, it was Buffalo. He was a long-standing coach for Buffalo because he won a Super Bowl with Buffalo, and I think he did coach for the Rams. He was the Rams coach for 3 years, made the playoffs twice, then went 3-14, got booted out. But he is now the defensive coordinator for the Falcons. There is no changes with Roman Pfeiffer or Mike Shula in Carolina. And then there is a change. They fire Greg Marshall, the offensive coordinator in New Orleans. So Pat Shurmur has Greg Marshall, fired him, hires Pep Hamilton, seeing him as an offensive genius. And then Marvin Lewis stays the defensive coordinator in New Orleans. Dallas also has a small change. They have Kyle Shanahan and Mike Shanahan as coach and a head coach and offensive coordinator. And then Dennis Thurman gets signed as the defensive coordinator after firing Jim Haslett. The Cowboys have been the younger brother the entire franchise. They made the playoffs once. They actually had their best season ever, going 9-8 this year. They went 12-5 back in 2007, 2008 with Vince Young and John Harbaugh. Then they went 7-10, 7-10, 7-10, fires John Harbaugh, hires Mike Shanahan, goes 7-10, then goes 6-11, and then they went 9-8. So, I mean, if you want to see kind of the results there. And so they went 9-8. They're seeing progress. They have Russell Wilson, Adrian Peterson, some talented receivers like Kendall Wright. And so they fire Haslett, and they bring in Dennis Thurman, trying to help change up some things here in Dallas. Eagles, they have the same coaches, Doug Peterson, Dale Lindsey. In the Giants, they have the same coaches as well, James Saxton. Oh, actually, they don't have the same coaches because Wade Phillips was fired. And so Jim Schwartz becomes the Giants defensive coordinator. James Saxton stays OC. And then you've got Eric Mangini and Randall Cunningham supporting Marty Morningway as with the Washington Commanders. So thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed this. This is a lot of commentary on the coaching changes, but this is the type of stuff that I enjoy keeping track of because it helps with the history of the league. You can check out older videos if you're just now coming across this channel. We got 12 years of off seasons and gameplay, Super Bowls, and off seasons. So hope you enjoy it. Leave a like if you do. Subscribe to the channel if you want more updates on videos like this. Thanks for watching.